All right, students, this is chapter 10, which is titled Calculation of Medication for Special Populations Based on Body Weight and Patient's Age, and this is lecture 3. As usual, I'm going to ask that you guys have already read the chapter, reviewed the PowerPoint provided to you on Blackboard, and also have read the lecture notes that's provided to you on Blackboard. Now, so far, what we have talked about in lecture 1 and 2 of this chapter, as far as calculating the dosages for the special population group, we've basically been focusing on body weight, but I'm going to move forward and we're going to talk about calculations of medications for special population using pediatric formulas. All right, so chapter 10 kind of skips all over the place, but I want you guys to follow me. So there's 3 pediatric formulas you're going to use. You're going to use these formulas for pediatric patients, all right? And that all depends on the information that's given to you. So the very first formula we call it the Clark's rule, and you will see me abbreviate it as CR, but basically it's just a formula and you plug and chug the information that's given to you within your problem. You're going to just plug it within that formula. So the Clark's rule is based off of the child's weight in pounds over 150. This 150 basically stands for the average adult weight. Of course, we know that that's not the average adult weight, so not for every adult, let me say, but this is the formula that you would use, and that 150 is kind of that magic number for the average adult weight that's used within this formula. And then you're going to multiply that by the adult dose. Okay, I'm going to do some problems for each of these so you can see how we will solve it. The second formula, and if you're following me, this formula for the Clark's rule is actually on page in detail on page 350. You'll see why I say the book skips over. All right. The next formula that I want you guys to know is the Fry's rule. Okay. And you guys are going to see me abbreviate that as FR. That's actually in detail on page 369. All right, and so the way that this works is that it is going to use the age in months, all right, over 150 times the adult dose. But the key is you're only going to use this formula for a child that is 11 months or younger. All right. So if a child is 12 months, you're not going to use the Fry's rule. All right. The third rule that I need for you guys to know is the Young's rule, and you're going to see me abbreviate that by YR. That's also on page 369 in detail. But the way this rule works is that you're going to take the patient's age in years over their age in years plus 12, and you multiply that by the adult dose. Now, you're only going to use this formula for a child that is 12 months and older. All right. So the 3 pediatric formulas that you need to know is the Clark's rule, where you take the patient's weight in pounds over 150 multiplied by the adult dose. The next rule is the Fry's rule, where you take the patient's age in months over 150 multiplied by the adult dose. And the third rule is the Young's rule, where you take the patient's age in years over their age in years plus 12 and multiply it by the adult dose. Now, out of all 3 formulas, which of the 3 do you think is the most accurate? Well, if you said the Clark's rule is the most accurate rule. Why is that? Because it deals with the patient's weight. The patient's weight is always, or I'm not going to say always, but it is very accurate when it comes to the 4 processes of breaking down medication. You guys have learned that in pharmacology. So out of these pediatric formulas, the Clark's rule is the most accurate. All right, I'm going to pull up another page here so you guys can see how we solve these. All right, so let's go ahead and do and I want you guys to turn to page 350 and let's look at example 10-4. And this example reads that a physician orders Cefazil for a child with an upper respiratory infection who weighs 38 pounds. All right. The adult dose for Cefazil is 500 milligrams every 24 hours. All right. So what they want you to do is they basically want you to calculate the dose for this patient. Well, first things first, as you guys know, I pull out the information that's needed. So first things first, I'm going to pull out the information for the patient, which says they're 38 pounds. And I'm also going to pull out that information for the adult dose. I'm going to abbreviate that as AD for adult dose. And it says 500 milligrams every 24 hours. So my first question to you, A, is what is the patient's dose? So basically, I'm asking you to determine the dose ordered. This 38 pounds, or the average adult dose of 500 milligrams every 24 hours, does not tell you in detail how much medication this patient should be receiving. So based off of the information that's given to you, you have patient's info of 38 pounds and you have an adult dose. Anytime you have an adult dose, you're using some form of a pediatric formula. Now, because the patient's information is in pounds, then out of those 3 formulas, Clark's rules, Fry's rules, or the Young's rules, which rule would you use? It's based off of the patient's information. Well, if you have answered the Clark's rule, you are correct. I am going to use the Clark's rule, all right, CR means Clark's rule, to determine the dose ordered for this patient, which I am going to take 38 pounds over 150 pounds, and I'm going to multiply that by the adult dose of 500 milligrams. So, of course, you're going to round this off to the 100th place. So if you take 38 divided by 150 times 500, your answer, you get 126.66 repeating milligram. I'm going to round that off to the 100th place of 126.67 milligrams. That's the dose ordered for this patient. You see, that is a big difference. If the average adult dose is 500 milligrams, and this is a child who only weighs 38 pounds, we're not going to give them 500 milligrams. If we give this child 500 milligrams, we have overdosed the patient, because when you use the Clark's rule to determine the true dosage order, it tells me that the patient should only receive 126.67 milligrams. All right, let's try another example. Of course, I'm skipping through the book because your book is all over the place with the practice problems for these pediatric formulas. But let's go ahead and turn to page, I want you guys to turn to page 369. We're going to look at example 10-8. And this example reads, a physician orders amoxicillin for an infant 6 months old. The usual adult dose is 500 milligrams. Calculate the dose for the child. So as usual, I'm going to pull out the information I need. My patient's info is 6 months old. The average adult dose, so I'm going to put AD, is 500 milligrams. And what they want you to do is they want you to calculate the dose. Well, based off of the information that's given to you, you have the patient's information in age by months, and you have the average adult dose. When you're given an average adult dose, or the patient's age, whether it's in years, months, whether the patient's weight, whether it's in kilograms or pounds, you're going to have to use one of those pediatric formulas because that average adult dose has been given to you. So in this case, because the patient's information is in months, that means that you're going to use one of those three formulas. Is it the Clark's rules, the Fry's rules, or the Young's rule? Well, you ask yourself, which rule has the patient's information set up as age in months? Well, that's the Fry's rule. So I'm going to use the Fry's rule to calculate my dose, where I take the patient's age in months, and it has to be less than 11 months or below. So in this case, 6 months over 150, and you multiply that by 500 milligrams. Well, I hope you guys have your calculators out. So if I take 6 divided by 150 and multiply by 500, it tells me that approximately this patient should receive 20 milligrams. Well, 20 milligrams is a big difference from the average adult dose of 500 milligrams. If you gave this 6-month-old child 500 milligrams, then you have basically overdosed the patient and possibly have killed this child, because the child shall only be receiving 20 milligrams based off of the what? The Fry's rule when calculating the dose. All right. So I am running out of time for this lecture. This is lecture 3, but I'm going to pick right back up in lecture 4 with some more of these practice problems for the pediatric formula. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email.